computer science, MSc in intelligent systems. Well, that sounds fascinating in itself. She's an educationalist and information security professional. She's just finished secondment with UCL. She's currently figuring out the innards of Keynote. And help them keep going up. And yeah, she's just finished a secondment with UCL's Information Security Group as Senior Information Security Officer. So yeah, some hot knowledge here, I think, on data security. And she's currently actually also working on a learning analytics project, UCL's digital education team. So hopefully she'll be able to educate us in a few ways on the topic of data and justice. No, data and ethics and the law. Well, that's kind of justice. We hope. The two are boys alone. Right, okay, we're ready. Fantastic. Okay, take it away then. Big round of applause for Samantha Ahern.
Hello. Given that everyone was so brilliant this morning, I'm a little bit scared, so we'll see how it goes. Right, so when I pitched this, there were 4 questions. Because we're all about internet things, we're all about big data, and there are ethical things we need to think about with it, and there's legal things. Also, GDPR is a big thing. It is coming in 2018, whether we like it or not, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Also, there's kind of scary things, and we have privacy. We think we have privacy, is what I'm going to say on that one in a minute. And we need to think about who should be making the decisions. So I'm going to touch on some of this, or just get you thinking about some of this. So, this is a brilliant quote. So this is from the HEFC, which is the Higher Education. Basically, it's a think tank in government that thinks about HE. And this was from their Bricks to Clicks report, and it was about big data, and I think it hits the nail on the head, actually. And they were talking about data in education, but it covers all of data, okay? And it has, it provides powerful insights into our behaviour, and it does. And the minute we start aggregating, that becomes more and more powerful. And I think we don't realise how powerful that is, and how much is already out there, and how much we don't know about what's going on. I think that's really important. And that if we are going to be building things that use this data, and we're going to collect the data, then we need to be aware of the power of what we can do with it, and what maybe we should or we shouldn't do with it. Because we can doesn't mean that we always should. And I think that's really important. And then this happened this week. Everyone see this?
Yeah.
This was brilliant. So, allegedly, a legal request was made to Google from some kind of agency in the US to scan incoming emails for a thread. Automatically, apparently that then went to some file that they looked at. Who's got an issue with that? Yeah, see, in a weird way, I don't. So having worked in the Information Security Office, I've seen lots of RIPA requests and all kinds of things. And they have to jump through quite a few hoops to get it in the first place. And personally, I never looked at anything that I pulled. We didn't. It wasn't ours to look at. We collected it, we handed it over. Admittedly, it was for one person for a fixed period of time. But if they're creating this kind of request, then they've got to have a really good reason to pull it, which is why I'm not so worried. But it is kind of worrying that they can kind of do it. But we can do it anyway. We store all kinds of crazy logs. I have logs for Eduro, our Wi-Fi at the university. We have firewall logs. We have logging logs. And if I really wanted to, I could, in theory, track everyone around the campus by their Wi-Fi connections. We don't, and unless you do something wrong and we've got a legitimate legal reason to, we never look at any of it. We could, but we don't. So usually it kind of tempers on that. So, I'm talking a bit faster than my thoughts. Yay. Okay, so we're all kind of familiar with our current data protection regulations. Yeah? Bit old, 1998. Apparently they were actually written in 95, someone told me this morning, but only got out there in 98. And there's this beautiful bit of fairly and lawfully, which is kind of nice, and limited specifically stated purposes. That actually gets a bit vague, because we tend to opt out of things. Okay, so our default consent permission, so if it's not lawful and fairly, then we give consent. And our default method is opt out. So quite often you don't realise what's collecting as such without you explicitly saying so. And that is going to change slightly. But it does quite fun things. And this lovely bit down the bottom is nice and this is fun, but that doesn't always quite play ball either, because we know that the safe harbour is the word, fell through. Because basically people could do what they wanted. So under US data law, unless you're a US data citizen, you don't actually have any rights. So if you give your data rights to America, they can do what they want, which is fun. And even with safe harbour, in theory you have the same rights, but the American government can still do what they wanted anyway. So the idea is that now we have Privacy Shield, and this is somewhere, and I don't know where. Okay, so this is our shiny new agreement. Possibly not, because it's a bit big PDF, that in theory gives us a few more rights. We have a right to complain about things if we don't like them. But there's quite a nice bit that there is a bit of a laugh with that. In that the people you're complaining to get to pick the person that investigates, which actually Max Schramm is not happy about. So I've got a funny feeling this might yet get contested as well. So you have now a redress, which is quite nice, which we didn't have before. And it is a nicer piece of legislation, but there's still holes in it. And in theory, it's in place. Microsoft did it like that, which makes me wonder how good it is if Microsoft can do it like that. Because they've kind of got data everywhere. And I'm going to talk about Windows 10 in a minute, because that really is an interesting one. So it does allow us to transfer data to America. I would say whenever you transfer your data overseas, really think about it and think about the implications of it. There will always be bits where governments can access stuff for legitimate reason. But the rules around it change all the time. Okay, and if you are using things yourself, cloud services, just think about that as well. Yes, please. Okay, so our shiny new European GDPR. Right, comes into the statute books as of May 2015, May 25th and 2018. Okay, that is when we will be subject to do all the things in it. But the ICO say you need to think about it now. Brexit isn't actually going to impact this much. If we are dealing with European organisations, if we have European subjects, we need commensurate laws. So a lot of what is in GDPR is going to have to be done regardless of whether we're still in the EU or not. And there are it's a lot of text and I didn't want to put it on the slide, so I thought I'd just like link to the stuff. Yeah, so can you scroll up? Because there's... Yay, so this is Article 5. And actually it's this bit, which is the really, really nice bit. Okay, so it's collected for specified, explicit and legitimate purposes, and not further processing around it is incompatible with those purposes. This basically means that if you are collecting data up front, you have to be explicit about what you're going to use it for, and it has to be given consent. It's not opt-out anymore, it's explicit consent. That is a massive change, and I think that's going to be a game changer, big time. And for me personally, that's key. But there is, you know, the biggest laugh on the planet, because we have Windows 10. Who's installed Windows 10? Who did a custom install of Windows 10? Right, if you didn't, you may not have seen the 5, 6, 7 pages of data collection that you had to opt out of in Windows 10. Okay, so Windows 10 is worse than Google and collects an awful lot more data than you ever wanted to. And if you search Windows 10 data collection, there are pages and pages of hits on Google. Okay, in fact, France is so upset it wanted to take Microsoft to court because of the way the App Store behaves and the data it collects. Okay, So at the moment, Windows 10 is an opt-out. Hopefully that's going to change and will be much clearer. But it is a little bit scary, okay? So not so good. Okay, so the nice bit about our GDPR, which I'm hoping we're going to get, and should hopefully alleviate great joy with Windows 10, I'm hoping, is that subject access. You can request all of the data, regardless. They will have to give you everything about you, which is fantastic. Inaccuracies corrected. In theory, we can do that now. Sometimes, you go to the dentist and every time you fill in a form, it's not changed, but that has to be changed. Information erased, like properly erased about you, okay, which is kind of quite sweet because that doesn't always happen. Prevent direct marketing. I'm hoping this gets rid of the horrid Facebook ads that keeps sending me out a single. Actually, the biggest bubble about that is given. Who else got this? The crowdsourced pictures from your wedding from your friends. Did anyone else get that ad? Right. It seemed quite a generic one. I'm like, either they know something I don't, they've blasted it out, or they've scraped my content because I was talking about my uncle's wedding. So I don't know what I was kind of a bit more scary about. But yeah, apparently I got married and my friends had photos. But, I'm hoping this kind of gets rid of some of that. Automated decision making and profiling. Could be interesting for banks and credit control companies. That one. Also, the fact that I'm about to do an awful lot of work on learning analytics. Okay, so that could be interesting for our students. So at the moment, learning analytics is the analysis of data around teaching and learning to enhance the student experience or to help them complete their courses better or to get a better grade. We're not doing or thinking of doing anything around decision making. There are some systems in the US though that recommend specific student courses, or that they don't take certain modules because of performance. And the OU actually has a piece of software that can recommend, based on data, a path through their courses to get you a better grade. So, yeah, again, that's going to be interesting. So you just need to think about how that actually works. So if you're building decision-making systems, are you automating, are you profiling? If you're using any kind of demographic data, then you could well be profiling. And data portability. So it's about moving data between countries. So we work with the EU, we have EU citizens. It needs to be portable, it needs to be commensurate. Why am I waffling on about this? Because of metadata and aggregation. Sometimes a data set on its own allows people to remain anonymous. You start aggregating them, and suddenly they're not anonymous anymore. So I come from an area in Cambridgeshire, my exact specific area that I come from actually has a very low HE uptake. It's actually marked red as one of the worst percentages. It's pretty poor. But then if you looked at who had higher degrees in that area and the numbers, two different data sets, so you put them together, I stick out like a sore thumb. Okay, very poor, has a master's degree. Doesn't work out. So we start getting things together. There's the classic thing of the Target with the shopping and they get vouchers for the pregnancy stuff for the teenage daughter. We can upset people. There is a lot of research being done on this on privacy-preserving algorithms, which is coming up. I know Netflix had a problem in that they could actually start identifying people by the stuff they watched, even in an anonymised data set. It's all right. So just think about it. So a few fields on their own, not too bad. Add more fields, add extra data sets, it's cool. Now, if people start wanting to commercialize data sets, then that's not so cool. So I'm borderline anemic. I don't eat anywhere near enough meat. I have issues. If, say, in the future, we go down a private healthcare system and they're going, right, well, actually, you've got a problem with this, but if I look at your shopping record from Tesco, because they might decide to monetize it, they go, I don't want to give you healthcare, that becomes a different ballgame. Okay? So at the moment we don't do any of this, at some point someone might want to do it. So you might want to think about it. University environment. I put this here because I said that we have an awful lot of data. And we make very clear decisions not to use it. So we were looking at, our estates division were actually looking at occupancy sensors, and they put through several models, and we rejected pretty much every bid they put in because it meant they would be tracking people around our buildings and our campuses, and we didn't actually think that that was our place to track people. You know, we don't track our students. I could track our students using EduAim, our Wi-Fi connection points. We can tell, you know, where their phone is clocked in, and I can refer that back to your logs to who it is. But it's not a right thing to do. They have a right privacy. If I'm looking at their performance as a student, they may not be going to the library as much, they may not be going to VLE as much. Do I really need to know that they're sitting in the student bar? I could, but I don't need to. That's a step too far. I don't need to know what they're doing in their private life. So I leave that bit alone. Okay, that's an ethical and a privacy decision that as a university we're making. And it's something that our sector is taking really, really seriously. So I'm going to refer back to this Bricks to Clicks recommendations again, and 3 of them really stuck out for me. So this is pre-GDPR, so this was published last year. So one of the key things I picked out is this benefits, limitations and risks attached. So this is risks attached to collecting data and using it. So before we even start, we need to think about what they may be. So we're kind of doing a risk assessment and an impact analysis on our students and our well-being before we even start. It says we've got to have a clear ethical policy and code of practice for this. And as a minimum, we need to address privacy, security of data and consent. So that's a really big thing. We've got all of this data, this really rich data that we can use to help the students, you know, help them get a better experience, identify where they're struggling, identify the push it. But we need to know how far is too far. And that, again, is also really key. So that is already there, certainly for us, and I'm hoping other identifying businesses. And it's this informed consent. So it's their personal and their learning data and the analytics. Okay, and if we start bringing in anything else, we've got to change the guidelines to do that too. Okay, so certainly in HE, these are our recommendations already. And this kind of echoes a lot of what's said in the GDPR. So we have a lot of data, we have a lot of scary data, very lots of personal and key data, and it's really important that we think about it. And I just kind of wanted to put this up because privacy is the game out now, because I don't think we have privacy anymore. My phone knows where I am, Facebook knows where I am. I'm logged into Google on my phone, it knows exactly where I am. My Oyster card knows where I've been. I think it's an illusion, to be honest, but I think if we can protect people's privacy as much as possible, then I think it's something that we should do. Sorry, that was a bit of a kind of a whistle-stop tour of legal stuff, and I hope it's raised some questions and it's told you stuff, not just me regurgitating things. So yeah, if you've got some questions.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions right now, but we will have a break after the next panel where you can grab Samantha in the breakout area and fire across any information, any particular queries about any of that data stuff, because it is all absolutely fascinating and quite hard to navigate.